O sujeito a ser testado é simplesmente colocado numa sala com um grupo de atores que fingem que também estão sendo testados.
Esta é a primeira.
É mostrado um par de fichas. A primeira tem uma linha desenhada. A segunda tem várias linhas de diferentes comprimentos. Os indivíduos têm que escolher uma linha igual à da primeira ficha.
Todos os atores que fingem estar sob o teste dão a resposta errada.
B.
Após todos darem a mesma resposta errada,
B.
pede-se o mesmo
B.
para a pessoa que está sendo realmente testada.
O experimento foi projetado para testar se o sujeito vai agir contra o grupo e responder corretamente ou de acordo com o grupo, dando uma resposta que ele sabe ser errada.
É A.
Inicialmente, muitos deram a resposta certa, mas não imediatamente.
A maioria das pessoas hesita. Elas exibem externamente o conflito interno entre o desejo de fazer parte do grupo e a vontade de dizer o que estão realmente vendo.
O experimento continua e muitos participantes acompanham o grupo sabendo que estão dando a resposta errada.
A.
O desejo de ser aceito supera o desejo de fazer o que é certo.
É o A.
Descobriu-se que 75% das pessoas testadas negam aquilo que estão vendo e entram em conformidade com o que as outras pessoas disseram. E não porque havia motivos legítimos para a incerteza, mas sim porque elas foram levadas pela força da conformidade com a opinião unânime do grupo.
Os cientistas atribuem esse comportamento a um fenômeno conhecido como pensamento de grupo.
Is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with a white shirt, the lady with a trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before. Now, here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door, everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale University. The subjects are 40 males between the ages of 20 and 50 residing in the greater New Haven area.
Psychologists have developed several theories to explain how people learn. One theory is that people learn things correctly whenever they get punished for making a mistake.
40 years later, Milgram's infamous experiment, Obedience, is still taught in classrooms around the world.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learn. All right, now the next thing we'll have to do is set the learner up so that he can get some sort of punishment.
What inspired Milgram, I would say there were a number of factors. One of them is he was very ambitious. He wanted to make a mark in social psychology. And he wanted, as he wrote to one friend, he wanted to come up with the boldest experiment that he could think of.
Would you roll up your right sleeve, please? This electrode is connected to the shock generator in the next room. And this electrode paste is to provide a good contact to avoid any blister or burn. Do you have any questions now before we go into the next room?
About 2 years ago, I was at the Veterans Hospital in West Haven. And while there, they detected a heart condition. There's nothing serious, but as long as I'm having these shocks, how strong are they? How dangerous are they?
Well, no, although they may be painful, they're not dangerous. Anything else?
No, that's all.
All right, teacher, would you take the test and be seated in front of the shock generator, please, in the next room?
But the experiment was rigged.
The victim was an accomplice of the experiment. The victim, according to plan, provided many wrong answers. His verbal responses were standardized on tape, and each protest was coordinated to a particular voltage level on the shock generator.
Now, as teacher, you are seated in front of this impressive-looking instrument, the shock generator. Its essential feature is a line of switches that goes from 15 volts to 450 volts, and a set of verbal designations that goes from slight shock to moderate shock, strong shock, very strong shock, intense shock, extreme intensity shock, and finally XXX, danger severe shock. Your job, the experimenter explains to you, is a word pair test. If he gets each answer correctly, fine, you move on to the next pair. But if he makes a mistake, you are instructed to give him an electric shock, starting with 15 volts. And you increase the shock one step on each error.
Incorrect. You'll now get a shock of 105. Hard head. Just how far can you go in this thing?
As far as is necessary.
What do you mean, as far as is necessary?
Milgram was very much aware that obedience is a necessary ingredient for society to function. But he focused on the darker side of obedience.
Incorrect. 150 volts. Sad face.
Wait a minute. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now.
It's absolutely essential that you continue. You got no other choice, teacher.
Oh, I have a lot of choices. My number one choice is that I wouldn't go on if I thought he was being harmed.
Now, this man makes disobedience seem a very rational and simple deed. Now, other subjects respond quite differently to the experimenter's authority.
Wrong. It's hair. 75 volts, Jim. You don't know.
Please continue.
Some psychologists were troubled by the ethics of it. Many, if not most subjects, found it a highly stressful, conflicted experience. People are stammering, stuttering, laughing hysterically and inappropriately.
150 volts.
Experimenter. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me out.
Clearly, when we say people went to the top of the shock board, it wasn't like they were going blithely, sadistically. People went stop and go, stop and go. They were in a state of conflict, which was created a tremendous amount of stress. So that was the main critique.
This will be at 3:30.
As his voice began to show increasing frustration, so did I. And I was really in a state of real conflict and agitation. One of Stanley Milgram's basic contributions was that you don't ask people what they would do. given this hypothetical situation. You put them in the situation.
Wrong. I'm up to 180 volts.
Please continue, teacher.
180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man there.
According to Milgram, one of the things that's a prerequisite for carrying out acts that are evil is to shed responsibility from your shoulders and hand it over to the person in charge.
I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
All right, next one, slow.
He didn't hold any gun to anybody's head. Just the fact that he conveyed a sense of authority. Roughly 60-65% of the people went all the way to the top of the shock board.
450 volts. That's it.
Now continue using the last switch on the board, please. The 450 switch for each wrong answer. Continue, please.
I'm not getting no answer. Don't the man's health mean anything?
Whether the learner likes it or not, we
But
must...
he might be dead in there.
Milgram made the point, I think, very effectively, that the Nazis weren't all a bunch of psychopaths at Belsen and Dachau. A death camp from the middle class in New Haven.
Well, who was actually pushing the switch?
I was. But he kept insisting. I told him no, but he said he's got to keep going.
What kind of obedience would Milgram get today if he were to do the experiment today?
Probably about the same.
Probably about the same. Why?
I don't know. I think people are just inherently obedient.
It just really shows like how far human beings will go to appease what they perceive to be an authority figure.
Milgram has identified one of the constants, one of the universals of social behavior. The readiness to obey authority cuts across time. It's a constant. The other outstanding and distinctive thing about the obedience experiment is how much it has and keeps on permeating contemporary culture and thought. It's still with us in very, very important ways.